It started with flashing blue lights reflecting off calm, glassy lake water, the kind of night where everything should have been peaceful, silent. But instead, chaos echoed across the dock. A man who'd lived quietly for years was suddenly standing in his own yard, surrounded by police cars, while a furious woman shouted accusations into the night. Her voice cut through the air. "He's trespassing. He doesn't belong here." But the truth? She had just called the cops on the owner of everything she thought she controlled. Before that night, Isaiah Bennett's life was simple, quiet. He was a retired civil engineer who had moved back to his family's old lakefront property after his father passed away. The land had been in his family for generations. Tucked away at the edge of Clearwater Lake, surrounded by pine trees that whispered when the wind moved through them. Every morning, Isaiah followed the same routine. He'd brew strong coffee, step onto his weathered porch, and watch mist roll across the lake as ducks drifted by. He'd fix small things around the cabin, tend to his garden, and talk to his neighbors when they waved. He didn't bother anyone, didn't want trouble. But trouble had a way of finding him. Because when he moved back, he didn't realize how much the area had changed. The once rural lakefront was now crowded with rows of freshly built homes, manicured lawns, matching mailboxes, and one thing Isaiah had never dealt with before, an HOA. That's when she appeared. Karen Whitmore. Mid-50s, pearl necklace, clipboard in hand. The self-proclaimed president of the Clearwater Estates HOA, and the type of person who believed rules keep people civilized. From the first moment she spotted Isaiah's cabin, she saw something she didn't like, a man who didn't answer to her authority. The no trespassing, private property sign nailed to his gate only made it worse. To her, this wasn't just a cabin by the lake, it was her neighborhood, her jurisdiction. And Isaiah, just another non-compliant homeowner, she was determined to bring in line. But she had no idea that the man she was about to pick a fight with owned far more than just that cabin. He owned the very lake she was claiming to protect. The first confrontation happened on one of those lazy Sunday mornings when the air felt still, the birds were chirping, and Isaiah thought he'd finally found peace again. He was trimming the hedges by his fence when he heard the crunch of gravel, the sound of tires stopping too close to his gate. A white golf cart rolled up, polished and gleaming like it belonged in a parade. Behind the wheel sat Karen Whitmore, sunglasses perched on her nose, clipboard in hand, lips pursed like she'd just smelled something unpleasant. "Excuse me," she called out, stepping out of the cart with authority. "Are you the new resident here?" Isaiah wiped his hands on his jeans and nodded politely. "Been here about a year, ma'am. Can I help you?" Karen didn't smile. Instead, she pointed at his wooden sign, the one that read private property, no HOA. "That sign," she said sharply. "It needs to come down immediately. This property falls under the Clearwater Estates HOA. You can't just exclude yourself." Isaiah tilted his head, calm but firm. "Ma'am, I've lived here on and off since I was a kid. My grandfather bought this land long before any HOA existed. My deed's separate, always has been." Karen let out a short, dismissive laugh. "That's not how it works, sir. Every home around the lake is part of our association. We all pay dues. We follow community rules. You can't just opt out." "I didn't opt out," Isaiah said evenly. "I never opted in." For a brief moment, silence hung between them, the kind that feels heavier than words. Then Karen scribbled something on her clipboard, muttering under her breath, "We'll see about that." Over the next few weeks, envelopes started showing up in Isaiah's mailbox. Violation notices, payment requests, late fees, each one stamped with Clearwater Estates HOA in bold red letters. At first, he ignored them. He knew the paperwork was nonsense, but the tone of each letter grew more aggressive, words like final warning and legal action pending. Then one night, long after sunset, Isaiah heard something that sent a chill through him. The low rumble of tires on gravel again. Headlights cut through the darkness, stopping right at his gate. 3 silhouettes stepped out, one of them holding a flashlight, another holding a clipboard. And then came the knock. Hard, demanding. "Sir, Clearwater HOA enforcement. Open the door immediately. When Isaiah opened the door, the cold beam of a flashlight hit his face. 3 figures stood on his porch, 2 police officers, and right between them, Karen Whitmore clutching a folder like it was her badge of honor. "There he is," she said, voice dripping with satisfaction. "That's the man refusing to comply with our HOA. He's trespassing on private HOA property and ignoring official orders." Isaiah blinked slowly, disbelief spreading across his face. "Trespassing. This is my home," he said, gesturing behind him. "My land." Karen stepped forward, heels clicking against the porch wood. "His property line overlaps with Clearwater Estates. He's been using our lake, violating community policies, and refusing to pay dues for nearly a year." The younger of the 2 officers looked uncomfortable. "Sir, we just need to verify some documents. Do you have proof of ownership?" Without hesitation, Isaiah nodded. "Of course. Give me a second." He disappeared inside, calm but burning inside. This wasn't just about property anymore. This was about respect. A minute later, he returned with a large brown folder, its edges worn from decades of use. He laid it on a small wooden table under his porch light. "Here," he said. "Deeds, maps, survey records. Everything's been in my family name since 1972. The officers leaned in, flipping through the papers while Karen hovered behind them, arms crossed, muttering, "These can't be real. He's trying to scam the system." But then the older officer's eyes stopped on a page, an official county record stamped and signed. He read it twice before looking up. "Ma'am," he said slowly, "this document says Mr. Bennett owns not just this lot, but the entire lakefront parcel." Karen blinked. "No, that can't be right." The officer turned the page toward her. "It's dated decades before Clearwater Estates was established. This property, including the lake access, is registered under his family's trust." For the first time, Karen's voice wavered. He owns the lake." Isaiah exhaled, his patience thinning. "My grandfather bought it before any of these houses existed. You built your community around my lake, and never checked the records." The officers exchanged uneasy looks. One closed the folder and said quietly, "Ma'am, I think you owe this man an apology." But Karen wasn't about to back down. Not yet. Her pride wouldn't let her. And that was when everything truly began to unravel. Karen's face turned red, a deep, angry shade that said she wasn't used to being wrong, and she definitely wasn't used to being publicly corrected. Her voice cracked as she pointed a trembling finger at Isaiah. "He's lying. This is a setup. He probably forged those papers." The younger officer shifted uncomfortably. "Ma'am, this documentation is legally verified by the county clerk's office. It's real." But Karen's fury only grew. "You don't understand. I run this community. This man's been ignoring our HOA policies, our letters, our—" Isaiah finally raised his voice, not loud but sharp, controlled, the kind of tone that silences a room. "Your policies don't apply here, Ms. Whitmore. This land doesn't belong to your association. You've been trespassing on my property for months." That last line hit her like a slap. The officers turned toward her. "Ma'am, he's right," one said firmly. "You're standing on his private land right now." Karen's jaw dropped. She looked down at her feet, as if the dirt itself had betrayed her. "No, no, no, this can't be happening. I've been organizing community events by this lake for years. You can't just—" Isaiah cut her off quietly. "Actually, I can." He walked past her, down the wooden steps, his boots thudding softly against the earth. The night air was still, the moon reflecting off the rippling water. He stopped at the edge of the dock, turned back toward her, and said in a voice calm enough to scare her more than yelling ever could, "Starting tomorrow morning, this lake is closed. No swimming, no fishing, no access. It's private property, and I'll be enforcing that law from now on." Karen blinked, eyes wide. "You can't ban me from the lake. That's community property." Isaiah shook his head. "Not anymore. You should have checked the records before you called the police on the man who owns the view outside your window." She froze, speechless for the first time. One of the officers cleared his throat. "Ma'am, I suggest you leave before you make things worse." Karen's shoulders stiffened. She turned, stormed toward her golf cart, and sped off into the darkness, the sound of gravel crunching under her wheels fading into the night. The older officer looked at Isaiah and nodded respectfully. "You handled that better than most would have, sir." Isaiah just looked back at the lake, calm again, and finally allowed himself a small, quiet smile. The next morning, the lake was silent again, the kind of silence that follows a storm. Sunlight glimmered on the water as Isaiah stood by the dock, hammer in hand, a new sign resting against his leg. He took a breath, lined it up, and nailed it to the old wooden post. "Private lake. Entry by permission only." The sound of each hammer strike echoed through the still air, almost like punctuation marks, an ending to months of tension. By mid-afternoon, word had already spread through Clearwater Estates. Residents peeked from their porches and front windows, whispering, pointing toward the lake. Some of them, the ones who'd once cheered for Karen's strict rules, suddenly wanted to stay quiet. Others, the ones who'd been too afraid to speak up, started smiling when they saw Isaiah's new sign. A few even came by later that week, polite, nervous. One older couple brought cookies and apologized for the misunderstanding. A young mother from the other side of the neighborhood thanked Isaiah for standing up to Karen. "She's been running this place like a dictatorship," she whispered. And as for Karen Whitmore, within a few weeks, she vanished from every HOA meeting agenda. Rumors spread that she'd resigned after being reported for misuse of authority. Others said the HOA board voted her out quietly to save face. Her golf cart sat abandoned in her driveway for days, until one morning it was gone, just like her voice. Isaiah went back to his peaceful life. He fixed the broken steps on his dock, replanted the hydrangeas near his porch, and started each day the same way he used to, with coffee, quiet, and the sound of ducks gliding across the water. But something inside him had changed. He no longer felt like the quiet man trying to avoid trouble. He'd faced it, calmly, truthfully, and came out standing taller. Every time he looked out over the lake, he saw more than just water. He saw legacy. He saw dignity. He saw the line his grandfather once drew, and how he defended it without shouting, without anger, just with truth. Because sometimes, justice doesn't come through revenge. Sometimes it comes through stillness, the kind that reminds everyone exactly who owns the ground they're standing on. And for Karen, that was the hardest lesson of all. If you were in Isaiah's place, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories like this.